G'day, thanks for tuning in. Today we'll be talking about the top mid prices, in my opinion, for this year. So first of all, my representation of a mid pricer is someone between 200 and 400k. So yeah, we'll start off with the backline mid prices. The top one for me is smack bang on that maximum mid price price range, and that's Hewitt at 399k. So with Hewitt, the other day in the practice match, played pure midfield, and especially with Walsh out, he should have that role for the first 5 or 6 weeks at a minimum, and then potentially rotate through the wing as well. So with Hewitt, last week in the Pracky match, this week in the Pracky match had 28 touches. So that's awesome. I think Hewitt is not necessarily a lock, but if you're looking for a cheaper option down back or in the mids, Hewitt could make quite a bit of money and potentially be a top 6 defender should he keep that midfield role. So Hewitt's one to watch for me. Moving on to number 2, we've got from the Hawks, Will Day. So there are injury concerns at the moment for Will Day. Could potentially miss early rounds. However, I think once he does return, he is a real potential breakout option for this year. Last year, in non-injury affected games, he averaged 86.5. So I think he's only going to improve if he's healthy, and yeah, really cheap and potential breakout option. Number 3, I have as Kitty Coleman. DR is super keen on this bloke, and likewise I am too. So he's promised that new role at halfback for the Lions this year, and yeah, a little bit of running carry up the ground. So see how he goes in the Marsh games. He didn't play in the Pracky match this week because he was in an exposure site. But yeah, Kitty Coleman played that halfback role for the last few games of last year and averaged 84. So I think a full preseason of getting that role under his belt, he could potentially average around that 90 mark. So at his price, I think he's definitely one to consider, and he's in every team that I'm making at the moment. Number 4, bit of an interesting one. I have Tom Highmore. There we go. So Highmore's a bit of an interesting one. Not too cheap, 368k, but I think with Caulfield out, he'll have awesome job security, an increased role down back as an interceptor. He went 90 plus on 4 occasions last year, so I think second year, more experience under his belt, increased role. I think Highmore is another one like Will Day who could potentially break out for the Saints. So not for me, but he could be. He's in like 1% of teams or something. So very, very unique player there, and if he breaks out, that could be the difference between, a good year and a top 100 year. So who knows? Players like that, not many people pick them, but the ones who do, and if they break out, they can really pay off. So yeah. Number 5, I've got Daniel Rioli. 336k DPP. So Hawley retired end of last year. So there is that halfback role there for either Rioli or Ralph Smith, I think. And at the moment, I think Rioli is outplaying Ralph Smith. So we saw glimpses of Rioli play that role last year, but I think he could be that full-time run-off halfback this year. Averaged around 77 in that halfback role when he did play there last year. So I think, with the preseason under his belt of playing that halfback running carry role, he could be another breakout option. And at number 6, I have Wayne Miller. Never really done too much Supercoach wise in his career so far, but who knows? He could get a decent role down back, potentially average 85. I wouldn't see him averaging any more than that. So yeah, not one for me, but again, apart from Coleman, he's the cheapest of these blokes. So if you're really on a tight budget, Miller could be one to consider, but again, doesn't have a great ceiling and yeah, a little too much risk there. Moving on to the midfield, the top option for me is Matt Rowell. We saw what this bloke could do in his rookie year. Polled Brownlow votes in his second game, averaged 100 in just 5 games, and then went down with an injury. Last year was rough for Rowell. Got injured round 1 in the first 5 minutes or something. Didn't train for 12 weeks. Came back round 13 and was expected to be a star player again. So too much pressure on Rowell last year to do well, but full preseason, hasn't had any injury concerns as of right now. Was good in the practice match last week. So yeah, if he can live up to that star potential, which I think he can, he could be a really good mid-pricer in the midfield, sorry. At number 2, I have Dylan Shiel. He's a proven scorer in previous years and had an injury-affected run last year. But in the pracky match against the Dogs on Tuesday, I think it was, or Wednesday, he scored 95 points, which at 361k is promising signs. So if Shiel can average around that mark, he could be definitely one to consider if you are on a budget in the midfield. Number 3, Pat Lipinski. 5% of teams. Didn't have a great year last year, only played the 9 games though, and has found himself in new colours at the Pies. Still not 100% sure what his role will be come round 1, whether it's half forward, in the guts or on the wing, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, in the pracky match, only played 3 quarters, and he was good. He had 19 touches and a goal, so yeah, we'll see how Lipinski goes in the Marsh game this week, but again, he's definitely one to consider and one that I've been considering as well. Number 4, I've got as Jared Berry. I was watching him in the practice match, and yeah, he was all over the ground, got a lot of the footy, and he even hit the scoreboard at some point. So very, very cheap Berry for someone that averaged, I think, 97 in 2020. So yeah, if he gets wing minutes, some midfield minutes, he could be a very handy option and make a lot of cash quite quickly. Don't think he'll be a keeper, but could definitely get to around 500k, I believe. Next spot, I've got Jai Caldwell. Everyone jumped on him after their intra-club when he had 102 points in a half. Didn't look amazing in the pracky match this week. Hardly had any CBAs. Couldn't find a whole lot of footy, so I think it'll be a bit challenging for him to find good midfield minutes now that Shiel's back and looked so good as well. So yeah, Caldwell, I'm not too sure, but see how he goes in his Marsh game this week. Number 6, I've got Will Brodie. He was a standout for the Dockers in their pracky game this week. Attended 19 CBAs and had 28 touches. So yeah, got a lot of the footy, almost rookie price this bloke. If he gets good job security and a permanent role in the midfield, he could be a potential breakout in the forward line as well. I've got him in the midfield as of right now because I couldn't fit him in the forward line, and with that DPP I could fit him in the midfield, so that's why he's there. But if you were going to pick Brodie, I'd pick him in the forward line, and yeah, potential breakout option. Number 7, I've got a little bit of an interesting one here, James Worpel. A lot of people won't agree with me. Don't get me wrong, I have not even considered picking this bloke, but he has been a good scorer in the past. Averaged 97 in 2019 and has had 2 average seasons since then, but who knows, could potentially bounce back and get to around 500k, could make a bit of money, could average a ton, who knows, not for me, but just was struggling to find another mid-pricer in the mid, so just went with Warple in the end. And the final mid-pricer for the midfield is Finn McRae. 206k, very, very cheap. But yeah, his job security isn't as good as people thought. Everyone was expecting that he'll all of a sudden be like his brother Jack in year 2, but no, I don't think the role will be there for him yet. I don't think he'll get mid time if he does play, potentially along the wing, maybe a few CBAs here and there, but I don't think he is a breakout option this year. So that wraps up the midfield. Moving on to the rucks. Again, for me, it's Gawn, Grassy. I just said Grassy. Gawn, Grundy, and Darcy as the top 3 rucks, without a doubt this year. But if you can't afford one of the top blokes, and you're really on a budget in the rucks, and you want to take a bit of a risk, 2 blokes, Draper and Witts. Draper's one bloke coming into his 3rd or 4th year now, who could potentially break out. Still needs to work on his kicking ability. Good ruckman, but yeah, can't really use the ball. So if he can work on that, he could be a top 5 ruck in the league in the coming years. So yeah, Draper, for those that are on a budget, who knows, could break out, but yeah, not for me. And Witts, coming off that ACL, is apparently having a fairly decent preseason. No concerns with that knee. Has scoring history in the past as well. Averaged 99 a few years back. So yeah, again, one of those blokes that's a little risky, but could potentially make some money if you can't afford one of the top 3 blokes. Moving on to the forward line. Unarguably, the number one mid-pricer down in the forward line is Stephen Coniglio. The most picked player in Supercoach as of right now, I believe, and for good reason. Played pretty much the whole pracky game in the midfield, and yeah, looked as good as ever. So Coniglio, I think he'll be the Zeeble of last year. You know, everyone will have him, but I think he'll average 100, and get to 500k, and should be a keeper as well. So yeah, Coniglio, must have. Number 2, I've got Cam Rayner. In and out of my side at the moment. Currently in. Played well throughout the midfield and the half forward line in Brisbane's pracky game, and yeah, seems to be really fit, really healthy. Not too many concerns about that ACL either. So Rayner's one, again, 30% of teams. You sort of have to pick this bloke just because if he does pay off at that price, you'd be kicking yourself if you missed him. So I think I'm going to pick Rayner this year. Number 3, Luke Jackson. Yeah, so averaged 71 last year. Should increase his ruck load this year as well. He's put on size over the off-season. Pretty cheap in a thin forward line this year, so not for me, but if you want to go a little bit in a different direction, Luke Jackson could potentially be a good option. Heading to the cheap side of things, Charlie Curnow. So with Mackay injured at the moment and might miss round 1, Curnow is one of those blokes that could be a bit like Danaher from last year and has that potential to go 100 here and there. So Curnow at 224k is definitely one to consider, and yeah, if he stays healthy, he will definitely make money. At number 5, Jade Gresham. There was quite a bit of hype around this bloke, but in the pracky game this week, he didn't have the midfield role that we were all hoping. So he got through the game injury-free, but yeah, hardly got any mid-time, didn't find a lot of the footy at all. So at 299, there are definitely mid-prices worth looking at before Gresham, like Rayner and Curnow and Brody and those type of guys. So I wouldn't be picking Gresham this year. I'm surprised he's in 24% of teams. I don't think he will be too great this year. And the final mid-pricer I have for this year is Hugo Ralph Smith. Likewise with Daniel Rioli, there's Hooley's role, which has opened up down back, and Ralph Smith and Rioli are currently battling out for that halfback role. So Ralph Smith did play in the Pracky game and played that role quite well. However, Rioli didn't play in that game. So Rioli's already had a few games in that role under his belt. So I think the Tigers might lean towards picking Rioli over Ralph Smith, and Ralph Smith might get that wing half forward role. So yeah. But anyways, these are all the mid prices that are potential options for this year. Some are locks, some are potential picks, and others I would steer quite clear of. So yeah, if you did tune in, thanks for watching. Hope this video helped, and see you soon.